Back on the Juice and the Cuse podcast, Wes Chang here with you. Syracuse football picked up its first win of the 2025 season with a 27-20 overtime win over Connecticut on Saturday. Here to break it all down is our great friend and three-time All-Big East punter at Syracuse, Brendan Carney. Brendan, how's it going? Welcome back to the program. I believe it's now 13 years of you joining us here.
Yeah, Wes, it's been a long time. Thanks for having me back on. I always love joining in the intro. You're kind of like my hype man, so I appreciate all that. But it's great to be back talking Syracuse football with you.
Yeah, 13 years, always time flies when you're having fun. So, Brendan, we'll get you started on this one. I mentioned in your introduction, Syracuse picked up a win against Connecticut on Saturday. Not the prettiest win, though. What did you think of what you saw on the field?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the first win of the season. In my book, a win is a win, right? I'll take them kind of however we can get them, even if it's not pretty. But I'll give them credit. They showed a lot of resiliency, being down in the fourth quarter, and staying focused and together as a team. It was nice to see them get the W at the end. I loved what I'm seeing out of Valari this year. He's clearly, stepped up and he's a leader within that team. And, his play on the field has kind of taken a 180 really from last year. Wasn't that productive last year, but I think he had over 100 yards receiving yesterday, which is really great to see him do that. He just looks like a legit tight end out there. I think he'll probably remain a go-to guy for Angeli. I think Angeli, I think he'll settle in. I think he's definitely has the tools. I think he just needs more reps to continue working, with his receivers and and his backs. You obviously want to see that clicking as early as possible. But I'm optimistic that this is a good offense. I like the backs with Nixon and Willis. I think they're a good 1-2 punch, and he's got plenty of guys to throw to, with Gill and John Tay and a couple other guys out there. Just as a fan, you want to see, consistent play, the offense sustaining drives and scoring points, whether it's touchdowns or field goals. You don't like to see the slow starts and having them to play catch up and kind of taking it all the way down to the wire with a few minutes left in the game. But, I think, with Colgate coming up next week, I think, we'll have another chance to, have these guys kind of, get some more reps in, some good quality reps before we get into ACC play. So, not the prettiest of wins, but, again, a win is a win. I'm happy it was, against an old Big East rivalry in UConn. You got to win those games for recruiting purposes in the Northeast. It was a great win all around.
Let me ask you a quick question, maybe going off script for a second here. I'm reminded that Fran Brown, after that game, made the team run wind sprints afterward. So before they exited the field, they were literally running back and forth to, I think, the 25-yard line. Yeah. Have you seen something like that before? And what do you think of that?
So I thought I played for a hard coach in Paul Pasqualoni, in the early 2000s. But it seems like Fran Brown is kind of taking it up another level with these guys. But, I think I saw a couple clips of it on social media, and it looked like it was only kind of 20-yard sprints, or maybe they were slightly jogging. I don't think after a long game where those guys are just constantly battling, playing 80, 90 plays, that he's going to really run them, up and down the field that much. But I think he was just kind of making a point that, we got the win, but, he's not happy with kind of the way in which they got it. So I like it. I think it's old school. I hope to see more of it from him if necessary. But yeah, I like Fran. I think that's the kind of guy he is. He's probably going to be out there running with them this week too, kind of punishing himself. He takes a lot of accountability for all, some of these, concerns that we have, as fans. But, I think he's going to, he's probably him and his staff are the guys that kind of get it straightened out and get it fixed.
Yeah, kind of two old crotchety dads like ourselves, kind of that old school vibe that we got from Coach P and now Coach Fran. And Brendan, that's 2 games in the books now. We've got 10 more left, so obviously plenty of season left ahead of us. We were texting yesterday about some of the concerns we both have about the team. What are you seeing specifically that worries you?
Yeah, so I think Fran's even touched on this because it's been pretty evident, in the first 2 games here. But, certainly getting pressure on the quarterback and tackling are the areas of concern that I'm seeing, at the moment. But, it looked a little bit better this week. And again, as I mentioned, we got Colgate coming in. Hopefully, it'll get better as those, give those guys a little bit more confidence, in those two areas, especially as we get into, ACC play after that. Those have to be fixed in order to win, those types of games. But it's great to see Tank Wilson back. I feel like we lost him early on last year to injury. So, it'll be fun to watch him kind of, get into a groove in the next few weeks and hopefully get that D line kind of humming there and getting some pressure on the quarterback. I mean, that's such an important part of the, of the defense. You can't have the guy stand back there, too long. He'll just, it'll tire out our DBs and our linebackers and allow him to just pick us apart. So, I'm confident, we got Tank Wilson. I think he can, he can rally those guys and, get that straightened out the next couple of weeks. And then as far as the tackling goes, I think that's going to get addressed. And I think Fran has called that out multiple times. And he's kind of taking ownership of it, that it's on him. I do know that we have some young guys that are playing, that are starting for us as well, getting a lot of snaps. And there's always going to be a learning curve, kind of coming from the high school game to the big time college football. The game moves, so much faster. So as these guys, continue to get that experience, I think they'll start to play faster. They'll start to react faster and kind of clean up, a lot of those tackling issues that we saw in Tennessee and we saw, yesterday against UConn.
So, Brendan, we know that this is a gauntlet schedule. After Colgate, there are no more breaks for the Orange. Do you see this as a bowl team knowing what lies ahead?
So I think they can get 6 wins. And right. So if they win all their home games, that'll get them 6 wins in a bowl bid. Maybe even the Pinstripe Bowl, which would be great because, that's local for me, a lot of Cuse alumni as well at Yankee Stadium. It would be great to see them get 1 or 2 on the road, but, as you just stated, it is a very tough schedule. Although, after the first 2 weeks, I'm not sure it's as tough as we all thought it was kind of coming into the season. Clemson, on all the college football shows, Clemson was, number 1 contender for potentially winning the national championship. They don't seem to be as kind of dominant as everyone thought they were.
I think that the final score was like an 11-point win over Troy, and they were down, well into the second half. So yeah, they're not as formidable as maybe we thought they were.
Yeah, exactly. And then, SMU lost a tight one. I think they went to OT with Baylor this weekend. BC lost against Michigan State. We've seen Duke lost. I forget who they lost to, but I know they lost. And then, November obviously is looking, right now it's looking pretty tough with back-to-back games against Miami and Notre Dame, who are, I think, number 5 and number 6 in the country. But, I think if we can just, stay healthy and continue to get better every week, I have all the confidence that, these guys can get it done. But the key is, going back to fixing those issues, we just talked about, a few minutes ago with getting pressure on the quarterback, and tackling and some small things on the offense as well. But, I'd say, let's kind of see how the next few weeks pan out. And, I think from there we'll have a good idea of kind of, who this team really is or who they're going to be and what kind of season that they're going to have.
So, Brendan, every time I invite you on the podcast, we talk about the game of football as 3 separate but equally important phases of the game. So last year, special teams weren't that special, but it seems like through 2 games, this is a far better unit. Jack Stonehouse at punter, he's letting them rip from his position. Then Trip Woody at kicker, I think, has really stabilized this unit. Special teams better than anyone. What do you think of the unit this year so far?
Yeah, I think they've, have certainly stood out. Especially, Trip and Jack. And, they both have great names as well. It's kind of like, Woody and Stonehouse, like Starsky and Hutch out there. But Fran, brought in Ricky Brumfeld from in the spring from Georgia Tech, who's had a lot of success, in special teams throughout his career. So, yeah, I think when you looked at it, certainly at this point, and maybe even a couple games going forward last year, the special teams were kind of, there's a spotlight on them, a lot of issues, going week to week. So, it's nice to see him kind of straighten that out this early in the season. Obviously, with Jack, he's up for all the awards, the Ray Guy Award. He's all the preseason ACC conference honors. So fully expect him to kind of continue on that path. Maybe grab a couple of those honors, but certainly have a great season. And I think Trip Woody. I honestly, I didn't even know who this guy was. I thought Jaden O was going to be our kicker. So I had to kind of look back on some articles that were written this summer and kind of catch up on it. But those two must have had an intense battle. But he's had a great, kind of early season so far, and fully expect him to, continue to perform for us. And it's also nice to see. Pretty sure he's repping number 47, so it's nice to see somebody, repping that again. But certainly happy with their play, and expect them to continue that as the season goes on.
They should have retired that number, quite honestly.
Yeah, I'm old enough where they probably could have retired it.
We are old enough. Anyway, Brendan, we'll get you out of here on this one. You're an exceptional punter. I've said that to you every time you come on the program. You went to play for the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL. Syracuse actually has the number one punter in the 2026 class coming in from West Virginia, Jimmy Gregg. He actually previously came on this very podcast to talk about his commitment. So I certainly think, and we were texting about this yesterday, Syracuse turning into a punter U. If you had any advice to offer Jimmy, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly starting to feel that way, right? Punter U. And I think Hughes has kind of had the reputation of being or putting cornerbacks into the league the last few years. So some people have called us cornerback U, but I think with Dixon, having a great NFL career right now, and Sterling, kind of in and out the last few years, and I even think Andre Smith might be kicking for the Browns right now. It only makes sense that Syracuse can snag the number one punter to kind of continue that line of great punters and kickers who've kind of come through the program. But yeah, it's exciting that we signed him. It makes total sense. Being that he'll play, 50 to 60% of his games, indoor with kind of no weather affecting his play. I think we should probably get, the number one punter and kicker every year because of that. But I would just tell him, my advice would just be to be humble when he comes in, and to work hard, keep his nose down and work hard, and earn the respect of the guys on his team, and be ready to perform when Fran puts him in, and to do his job, day in and day out. So pretty simple and straightforward. But if he's the number one punter in high school, he's doing something right. So I think he's going to be great for us.
Brendan, thank you as always. Again, our great friend, 3-time All Big East punter, Brendan Carney. We appreciate it as always. We'll catch up soon. Thank you again.
Thanks, Wes. Go Orange.